If you're a history buff, then you need to hear this. In the spring of 1462, on the banks of the Danube River, an army of the greatest empire on earth, hundreds of thousands strong, approached the borders of a small defiant principality. They expected surrender, they expected tribute. What they found instead was a nightmare, a forest not of trees, but of human bodies, thousands upon thousands, some say 10,000, others swear 20, impalement stakes rising like a grotesque wooden city, each carrying its own silent, contorted monument of agony. Welcome back to Shadows of History. If hidden truths and untold stories are your thing, you're in exactly the right place. Before we get started, hit subscribe, drop a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Big welcome to all the new faces. And to my returning viewers, you're the legends keeping this going. Now, let's jump straight into today's story. It's a good one. It was a sight so horrifying, so overwhelming, that the invading army, battle-hardened, disciplined, nearly unstoppable, halted their advance. Some soldiers vomited, others crossed themselves, some fled, and at the center of it all, watching from a distant hill, according to some chronicles, was a man whose name still echoes through history, both feared and misunderstood. Vlad III, voivode of Wallachia, son of the dragon, the man the world would one day call Vlad the Impaler. But who was he really? Why did he fill a landscape with impaled bodies? How did one man weaponize horror so effectively that it stunned the Ottoman war machine into retreat? And how much of this story is truth, and how much is myth? This is the chilling tale of the forest of 20,000 impaled bodies that forced the Ottoman Empire to flee. If you crave strange, brutal truths, then stay with me. To understand the forest of the impaled, we must first understand the world that created the man behind it. Vlad III was born in 1431 in the fortress city of Sighisoara in Transylvania, a region forever perched between empires, ambitions, and bloodshed. His father, Vlad II, had just been inducted into a chivalric order founded by the King of Hungary. It was called the Order of the Dragon. Its mission, to defend Christendom from the rapid expansion of the Ottoman Empire. Membership was not symbolic, it was a promise to live by the sword and, if necessary, to die by it. As the son of a dragon knight, young Vlad inherited not only the name Dracula, meaning son of the dragon, but also his family's bitter, relentless struggle for survival. Wallachia, his homeland, was a small principality between two titanic forces. To the north, Hungary; to the south, the Islamic superpower of the age, the Ottoman Empire. Caught in the middle, Wallachia was less a country and more a battlefield, a place where loyalty could shift overnight, where princes ruled briefly and died violently, and where the people had long learned that life was fragile and death a frequent visitor. In 1442, when Vlad was just 11 years old, he and his younger brother Radu were taken to the Ottoman court, not as honored guests, but as hostages. This was a common Ottoman practice. Take the sons of vassal rulers, treat them well, educate them, and ensure the loyalty of their fathers through the unspoken threat of execution. But this captivity became the crucible from which two brothers emerged as opposites. Vlad learned Turkish, studied strategy, and observed the Ottoman military machine, its discipline, organization, and relentless expansion. But he never forgot that he was a prisoner. He resented his captors. His hatred festered. Radu, by contrast, assimilated. He grew close to the Ottoman elite, especially to Sultan Mehmed II, later known as Mehmed the Conqueror, the man who captured Constantinople. Radu would eventually become one of the Ottomans' favored allies and one of Vlad's fiercest rivals. This brotherly duality, Vlad the defiant resistor, Radu the Ottoman loyalist, would shape Wallachia's future and lead directly to the forest of the Impaled. When Vlad finally returned to Wallachia around 1456 to claim his throne, he found a land bleeding from chaos. Nobles, called boyars, fought among themselves. Corruption ran wild. Ottoman tribute drained the treasury. Peasants suffered under the whims of the elite. And neighboring powers never stopped manipulating Walachia's politics. Vlad understood one truth. If he were to rule this fractured land, he would have to rule with absolute, uncompromising authority. And so he began his brutal consolidation of power. The boyars who had betrayed his father, executed or impaled, the corrupt nobles who plotted against him, impaled, thieves, impaled, foreign spies, impaled. Impalement became his signature, his message to all enemies, real or imagined. But Vlad also instituted strict justice, protected the poor, and ruthlessly eliminated corruption. Some peasants loved him for it. Some nobles feared him. Foreign powers loathed him. To his supporters, he was a defender of the realm. To his enemies, he was a monster. But regardless of how he was viewed, he achieved something Wallachia had desperately needed: order. And that order set the stage for one of the most terrifying confrontations of the 15th century. By 1461, Vlad III stopped paying tribute to the Ottomans, an act of open defiance against Mehmed, the conqueror himself. Mehmed was not a ruler accustomed to defiance. He had taken Constantinople at age 21. He commanded one of the most effective armies in the world. His empire stretched across 3 continents. He was not a man who tolerated insolence from a small, defiant principality north of the Danube. But Vlad escalated further. In a daring night attack, he crossed into Ottoman territory and massacred an entire garrison at Giurgiu. Wallachian forces burned settlements, destroyed supply depots, and left hacked corpses as warnings. Vlad had declared war, and Mehmed responded with overwhelming force. In 1462, he launched a massive invasion, variously recorded as 60,000 to 150,000 men, including elite Janissaries, Sipahi cavalry siege, engineers, auxiliary troops, specialists in terror and suppression. This was one of the largest armies Europe had seen in generations. Their objective, to crush Vlad III and install his brother Radu in his place. The Ottomans were prepared for fierce resistance. What they did not expect was what awaited them near Târgoviște. Before the forest of the Impaled, there was the night attack, one of Vlad's most legendary assaults. On the night of June 17, 1462, Vlad led a daring strike into the heart of the Ottoman camp. Wallachian forces, disguised as Ottoman soldiers, infiltrated the perimeter and launched a chaotic barrage. Their target, assassinate Sultan Mehmed II, they nearly succeeded. Several accounts describe how Vlad personally charged toward the Sultan's tent, killing dozens in close proximity to the Ottoman ruler before being repelled. The Ottomans suffered heavy losses, but they regrouped, and they pressed forward. The Wallachians, outnumbered sometimes 10-1, retreated toward Targovishte, the capital. And this is where the story reaches its darkest chapter. As Mehmed's enormous army approached the outskirts of Targovishte, they expected a final battle. They expected the resistance to collapse. They expected the city to fall. But what they found instead defied comprehension. Imagine for a moment the landscape around you slowly changing as you advance. Imagine seeing figures in the distance, motionless, vertical, too still to be alive. Then imagine realizing they are bodies. Impalement was Vlad's preferred method of execution, and it was uniquely horrifying. Victims were slid down a sharpened stake through the body, often entering from below and exiting near the shoulders or mouth. The stake was intentionally dull, so the victim would not die immediately, but slowly, sometimes over hours, sometimes over days. Now imagine that fate multiplied thousands of times, a field stretching several kilometers, dense with vertical stakes, bodies of men, women, and even children, enemies, criminals, captured soldiers, accused conspirators, and possibly even civilians from rebellious regions. The numbers vary. Some sources say 10,000, others 20,000, some claim 24,000. Even the lowest estimate is staggering. The stench alone would have carried for miles. The buzzing of flies, the circling of carrion birds, the bloated bodies in the sun. It was a spectacle engineered to devastate morale. One Ottoman chronicler wrote that Mehmed's soldiers were struck with fear and awe, for no one had seen such a thing before. Another account claims, "The Sultan said that a man who could do such things deserved to rule his land." Whether this quote is real or apocryphal, it captures the sentiment well. What stood before the Ottomans was not simply brutality. It was psychological warfare at an unmatched scale. The forest stretched so wide that an army marching through it needed hours to pass. Soldiers whispered prayers. Some vomited. Others fled into the woods. Even hardened janissaries, men who had toppled Constantinople, were shaken. To modern eyes, the forest of the Impaled may seem like pure madness, but to Vlad, it was strategy. He knew he was outnumbered. He knew he could not win a prolonged battle. He knew his enemies, Ottoman and domestic, saw him as a brutal tyrant. So he weaponized that reputation. The forest of the Impaled was a message, not to terrify individuals, but to terrify an empire. It said, "If you invade this land, this is what awaits you." It was, in a sense, medieval psychological warfare taken to its extreme. The Ottomans were used to disciplined resistance, daring night attacks, and fortified castles. They were not used to a man willing to kill tens of thousands and mount them like macabre trophies. Vlad understood that terror could be more powerful than armies, more powerful than wealth, more powerful even than victory. He used horror as a shield, and for a moment, it worked. Narrator: Mehmed and his commanders advanced past the forest, but their troops were shaken, supplies were strained, disease loomed, desertion increased. a campaign that was intended to be swift and decisive slowed to a crawl. Vlad had poisoned wells, burned fields, hidden livestock, evacuated villages, executed saboteurs, left nothing for the invading army to sustain itself. The Ottomans realized they were marching into a wasteland where every resource had been deliberately destroyed. The Forest of the Impaled was not just a message. It was the centerpiece of a scorched earth strategy designed to weaken the largest army of its time. After weeks of failed progress, mounting losses, and psychological exhaustion, Mehmed halted the campaign and began to withdraw. He left behind a smaller force under Radu, hoping they could defeat Vlad through political manipulation and local support rather than direct military confrontation. But the fact remains, the greatest empire of the age did not defeat Vlad by force of arms. They withdrew because they could not sustain a campaign in the face of such brutal resistance. The Forest of the Impaled had done its job. Though Vlad had forced the Ottoman retreat, his own people, especially the boyars he had oppressed, began to turn against him. Many saw Radu, the Ottoman-backed brother, as the softer, safer option. Civil conflict erupted. Eventually, Vlad was forced to flee, seeking aid from Hungarian King Matthias Corvinus. But Corvinus, suspicious and politically cautious, had him arrested. For more than a decade, Vlad was imprisoned. The Ottomans installed Radu. Wallachia became once again a battleground between empires. Vlad would eventually return to the throne briefly around 1476, only to be killed soon after. His head sent to Constantinople as proof. His life ended violently, as it had been lived. And Vlad III's memory has been twisted by centuries of propaganda, sensationalism, and misunderstanding. German and Saxon merchants he punished wrote exaggerated pamphlets portraying him as a demonic tyrant. Ottoman chroniclers depicted him as a barbarian. Later writers conflated him with fiction, especially Bram Stoker's 1897 novel Dracula. But the true Vlad was neither a mythical vampire nor a mindless butcher. He was a product of his age, a medieval warlord in a world where brutality was common and where survival often required fearsome displays of power. Was the Forest of the Impaled exaggerated? Possibly. Medieval chroniclers were known to inflate numbers. But something indisputable remains. Multiple independent sources, from across political lines, confirmed that a massive field of impalements was real, and that it struck the Ottoman army with such force that it helped turn the tide of a major invasion. This alone is extraordinary. The forest may not have been exactly 20,000 bodies, but it was large enough to shock an empire, and that is no myth. The Forest of the Impaled remains one of the most haunting examples of psychological warfare in human history. It demonstrated that military strength is not always measured by numbers, that terror can shape strategy, that the human mind is often more fragile than the human body. It echoes through history as a reminder that fear, once unleashed, spreads faster than armies and lasts longer than battles. And it solidified Vlad III's place as one of the most enigmatic figures of the medieval world, a hero to some, a monster to others, but undeniably a force that shaped the fate of nations, Even centuries later, the story of the Forest of the Impaled continues to fascinate because it challenges our understanding of humanity's darkest depths and our willingness to confront the brutality woven into our past. If you think empires are invincible, think again. In 1480, Vlad the Impaler, ruler of Wallachia, turned psychological warfare into a living landmark. After routing Ottoman forces, he piled tens of thousands of corpses along a road and impaled victims on stakes, creating a ghastly display that stretched for miles. Ottoman commanders saw it and recoiled. Morale collapsed. The invading army retreated. It wasn't just brutality, it was strategy, terror as deterrent. The forest became a legend that haunted Ottoman campaigns and cemented Vlad's ruthless reputation. Dark, effective, and unforgettable. A brutal reminder that sometimes fear wins where armies fail. The Ottoman army marched into Wallachia expecting a quick victory. Instead, they marched into a nightmare. A vast, silent forest of suffering created by a man determined to defend his land not just with swords, but with terror. Did it work? Yes, for a time. Did it cost him everything? Ultimately, yes. But one thing is certain, no army before or since has ever encountered anything quite like the forest of 20,000 impaled bodies. And the world would never forget the man who built it. Thanks for watching Shadows of History series. My goal is to bring forgotten stories and hidden moments from the past back to life, to explore the parts of history that often stay in the shadows. Each episode takes a lot of research, writing, and editing to make sure every detail is right and every story is told with care. If you'd like to help me keep creating these documentaries and grow this channel, you can support Shadows of History series on Buy Me a Coffee. Your support helps me make more videos, dive deeper into research, and build stronger connections with viewers who love history as much as I do. Every bit of support, even one coffee, truly helps bring more stories from the shadows into the light. Thank you for watching, for sharing, and for being part of this journey.